Okay, can everybody hear me in the back? Cool. I always get a little nervous using a microphone because I can hear myself a lot more too, and that's not awesome. But so welcome everybody. My name's Madeline. I'm a conservation coordinator at Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District. So we're your water provider, if you didn't know. And we're here tonight to talk about how to make your ideal Draper yard. So we're going to go through a bunch of different things and resources that the Water District offers to kind of help you learn and be able to implement some new practices into how to make a water efficient yard. But before we get started, I just wanted to thank you all for coming out today. This is a great turnout for our class, especially on a Wednesday night. Y'all are like superheroes. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time. I know y'all have like busy lives, and the fact that you care about conservation and saving water is really important, and it's really good to see. So thank you all for being out here. And we'll go ahead and get started. So this is me, like I said, conservation coordinator. In this class, we're really going to talk about three main things. So we're going to go through Localscapes, which that's kind of our design concept. That's how we're going to help you learn how to see landscapes, how to design them, how to find your own personal kind of flavor and see variety in what you actually like. Then we're going to talk about the Conservation Garden Park, which is where you can see examples, you can find plants. It's a free resource, a free public garden. And then we're going to talk about how you can get rebates and incentives through Utah Water Savers. So you can actually get paid for replacing lawn with a water efficient alternative. So we'll go through all the details. I know that's usually the most exciting part for some people. So just a little background on the Water District. So I work for Jordan Valley Water, and we are a wholesale water provider to about 800,000 people in Salt Lake County. You can see we service a majority of the valley. Above us is Metro Water, and then below us is Central Utah Water Conservancy District. And our two main reservoirs are Jordanelle and Deer Creek Reservoir, which I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know what a water district was. I didn't know they existed until I started working for one. And I certainly didn't know that Jordanelle was like our drinking water. So it's just interesting to like learn about stuff like that. So our mission is to deliver quality water to our entire service area every day. And when you think about that, that's actually a really huge mission. We have to get water from the mountains down into the valley and then into your taps. So just think about all of the logistics that are involved with that. Like so many different people are working for the district, so many different people are living in the valley. And then you compound it with a couple of these different issues, like we have population growth. So you can see in this graph, this goes up to 2065, and this is our projected population. And these numbers are actually without any immigration. This is all just birth rates in the state. So if our mission is to deliver quality water, we really have to think about, okay, if we're gonna have a bigger residency in Utah, how are we gonna get the same quality, the same great water that you guys enjoy now to all of these new people? We also have to take into account that our seasons are changing, our temperatures are getting different, our growing seasons are extending, which means we're using more water in our landscapes for longer periods of time. It's hotter. On average, this is the Salt Lake International Airport average temperature from, I think it's 1950-ish. Yeah, 1948 to 2018. So it's not super up to date, but you can see on average there's an increase there, which just changes how we can account for water. And this is really prevalent when we look at the Great Salt Lake. I know it's been a lot of the news right now, so y'all are probably sick of seeing this comparison, but it really hits home. We know we're in a terminal reservoir, or terminal basin, sorry, water district, but and you can see this is the difference from 1986 to 2022. So we want to be able to have water for the people who live here. We want to be able to have water for the lake. We want to be able to have water for the plants and the animals. So Jordan Valley decided, okay, let's look at how we're using the water we're delivering right now. And this is a breakdown of how all of our water is being used. Keep in mind, we provide only culinary water, so we don't do any secondary water, which means 60% of our drinking water is being used outdoor in the landscapes. That's your sprinklers, that's your lawn, that's when you're seeing it running down the sidewalk and you're just like, oh, geez. And so you can also see that that 60% is really only taking place from the months of April through October, peaking in that July time frame, which is when, we're putting the most water on our lawns because it's the hottest, and, lawn it goes brown when it gets hot, and so we throw more water on it trying to get it to go green again. So one thing that I try to explain in these classes is this is why the water district cares. So we see conservation actually as a source, a water source. So in our minds, okay, if we can conserve X amount of percentage of that 60%, we can push out expensive infrastructure projects by X amount of time. So rather than developing new infrastructure to take water from other rivers or different sources in the mountains, which are like billion-dollar projects, what we're trying to do instead is incentivize people to reduce their water use so that we don't have to do that. And that's why it's fun being a water district. It's so cool and challenging and interesting to think about. We have to not only think about water, but population and climate change and indoor-outdoor water usage, which is why we invented Localscapes. So has anyone in here heard about Localscapes before? I see a couple head nods and hand raises. That's way more than we usually get, so I'm really excited about that. Localscapes is a 5-step design concept. So it's designed by people in Utah for Utahns specifically, which is why we think it's going to help your landscape thrive. So here's an average lawn that uses almost 200,000 gallons of water per growing season. And it's really boring to look at, all lawn basically. I'm sure you have neighbors, or maybe you even have this lawn. And then you look at the one on the right, and this is a Localscape. It's going to use about 1/3 of the water, just under 65,000 gallons of water a season, and it still has lawn in it. It just also has some other things. This is going off the typical use of about 40 inches on a 1/4 acre lot, if you want to do the math. I didn't want to do the math, but. And then you can see here, this is it kind of from a bird's eye view. There's your traditional landscape. And when you think about it, like how much of that lawn are you actually using? Especially in our front yards, you know, I'm not super like into playing Frisbee by the road at my house. So I don't really use my front yard too much. And I think the worst piece of lawn in the front yard is like that one kind of up by the foundation planting bed, like around your front walkway. I'm like, why not just make it all planting bed? I just don't understand. So in a Localscape, really all we're doing is saying, okay, let's keep that usable lawn area. We don't want people to stop recreating. We don't want people to stop having picnics and reading books and having fun. But what if we just took out the areas that are non-functional and transition them into something that is more aesthetic, it's easier to maintain, uses a lot less water, kind of like benefits everyone around. It doesn't even, like, we haven't even talked about biodiversity or like ecosystem services, but it's a lot better than just having a monoculture of lawn. And this is a real life example. So this is my boss's house. This is my boss's house like probably 2 decades ago. Like, I don't know, but this is so common. There is grass everywhere. It's perfectly mowed, gorgeous green. So I was like, Courtney, how much were you spending on your water bill? Like, a girl has to know you were pouring water onto that house. And this is his house now. So it still looks beautiful. It just, honestly, in my opinion, looks even more interesting. There's more for your eye. There's more texture. There's more color. The park strip, all that unusable turf is gone, and there's still lawn. And that lawn still has a purpose. It kind of serves as this like resting place for your eye. The landscape looks organized. There's like a flow to it. Honestly, a lot of times you might be driving down the road and not even realize something is a water-wise landscape because they've done such a good job at designing their water-wise landscape that you don't even notice. Like, we're not trying to convince people to become Nevada, you know, where it's like the like skull and the wagon wheel and like one metal cactus. Like, if you like that, that's awesome. I kind of like that, but you don't have to do that. If this is more your style, then that works for us. So let's talk about some of the main things a Localscape is going to do for you. One, it's designed for Utah. So you live here, check. This is also designed for where you live. You're going to have better curb appeal. It's a really easy to understand design concept. Like, you don't need to go to school to understand how to design a Localscape. Full disclaimer, I'm not a professionally trained landscape designer. Maybe one day, but I'm not, and I get it. So if I can get it, you can get it. If privacy is an issue for you, it offers the opportunity to increase privacy. You can do it in phases, which is a huge one. Landscaping is pretty expensive, and I know personally, our economy isn't like fantastic right now. So this is another thing that's nice about a localscape. You don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, now I have to spend $180 million redoing my yard to save the Great Salt Lake. It's like, no, you can do it piece by piece. It's going to be water efficient, lower maintenance for you. You don't have to mow the lawn every single week. Improved functionality. We're going to simplify your irrigation. I knew nothing about irrigation before I started working here a couple years ago, and now it's like my favorite thing in the world. So if I can figure out how to do my own sprinkler system, I mean, literally anyone could figure it out. Steep learning curve, but I got there. And this really does work on any budget. We've had participants who have gotten everything for free off of Facebook Marketplace and done their project phased over years, and it's turned out beautiful. So you don't have to go out. If you want to hire a contractor, amazing, but you don't have to. So let's talk about the elements of a localscape. There are 5 main elements. Our first one is going to be kind of the most important one. It's the defining element of a localscape, and that's going to be the central open shape. So often people think of this and they think lawn, which is totally allowable. But if you don't want to have lawn, a lot of people don't want lawn in their yards anymore, and that's totally okay. You can do creeping thyme or kind of like a flagstone area. You can kind of make it whatever you want. It just needs to be a uniform space where your eye can kind of land and not get instantly overwhelmed. Also, before I go too much further, I just want to say this class is like the briefest introduction to localscapes. We have a bunch of other classes that will go more in depth into each of these elements. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, I promise it's not you, it's me. I made the class this way. And so don't like panic. There'll be more opportunities to learn too. The next is going to be your gathering areas. So these are going to be seating areas like a fire pit or maybe a gazebo, or a lot of people like to do an outdoor dining space. And the kind of the purpose of a gathering area is we want you to actually get out into your yard. Like, we want you to enjoy it. It's a beautiful place to be. Utah, like, summer evenings are wonderful to be outside in. So we want you to get out there, sit with your morning cup of coffee or tea or neither, and enjoy. Then we have activity zones. So these are places where your personality gets to kind of come out. Like, let's say you raise chickens, activity zone. You have kids who like a trampoline, activity zone. We've seen gardening sheds. We've seen zip lines. We've seen all sorts of crazy stuff you would not believe are in people's yards. But the real purpose of this is that all of these things are outside of lawn areas. So we're not putting our swing sets on the lawn anymore, because when you're trying to string trim around a swing set, you're either going to break your string trimmer or your heart, just because you're like, this is so frustrating, or the swing set over time. So keeping them outside of the lawn. Next, we have pathways, which these are the things that connect. They kind of help to have some movement throughout your whole landscape, let you walk from place to place so that you don't have to always traipse through the same area that's like, you're just like killing your lawn because you've like walked through your side yard so many times that it's like a stripe down the middle, or you have dogs. This way you kind of get to avoid that. And then everything else, all that leftover space becomes a planting bed. And that's also where you kind of get to decide, like, okay, do I like pops of color? Do I want a more muted landscape? Do I want it to be modern or English style? Or so it's really fun because it's playful. It's really up to you, which is nice. So here are some central open shape examples. You can see some are lawn and you can see some are not. And we're seeing more and more people get creative with this, and I think it's really fun. The only thing that you need to remember is that all of them are kind of this like resting area, right? Because if you have a landscape where it's just 100% planting bed, sometimes it can feel disorganized. So this is one simple trick that you can employ. You also don't have to, but if you choose to, it really helps to like, okay, visually I feel organized, I feel good in my landscape. Some lawn alternatives, people often ask like, okay, I don't want to use lawn. What else can I use? I want something living. I have a bunch of resources for that after the class if you're interested in that, and I'd be more than happy to go through a couple different alternatives with you. Here are some gathering area examples. You can see a lot of this is really personality based. Like, some people want to have big gathering areas. Other people want like a secret garden-y type of effect. And what's great about these areas is that they're not irrigated. So you're saving water right there. Super low maintenance because they usually have some sort of hardscaping underneath them. And they're also just fun. Like, once again, They get you to go outside, they get you to sit with your family and actually enjoy your landscape. Here are activity zones. You can see they're ranging from chicken coops to vegetable gardens. I always like to call out this picture of the trampoline because I know I just got done saying like, oh my gosh, keep everything out of your lawn. It's gonna make everything easier. And then you look at that picture and you're like, okay, well, she just lied to my face, but I didn't, because those are actually little ornamental grasses planted around the trampoline because they liked the look of having an in-ground trampoline, but they wanted it to be a planting bed around it. So it's actually all drip irrigated. And this trampoline is actually in a giant planting bed full of these individual ornamental grass plugs that don't have to be watered. They don't have to be cut. Like I just thought that was so ingenious. I was like, oh my gosh, what a great idea. But you could even put a basketball court in, you know, you really get to do anything. And then here are some pathways. I feel like pathways are slept on. I think that they add so much to a landscape. They really are such a great thing to add because it's zero maintenance. Once again, you're not going to water your pathway. It helps you move throughout your landscape. It also just like adds such like a whimsical element, and it really helps you to like flow. And they're pretty easy to install yourself. We have a bunch of videos on our YouTube about how to install different types of pathways, and you could totally do it yourself. And then here are some planting beds. You can see they really range again on whether you're a more foliage person, if you like different foliage colors, if you're into blooms, you can do, once again, this is a really like a personality-based section. I know people usually when they're designing their landscape, this is where they always want to start because it's the most fun. So they're like, I want to pick out 50 million plants, but really try and do this at the end and fill in the spaces that you have left over and find plants that actually work for those spaces. So I know that's a lot, and it's intended to be a lot in this class because we really just want to briefly give you like a little hint, a little taste of Localscapes so that you'll come back and watch one of our full-length classes. So we have a bunch of different full-length classes. They're all on localscapes.com, which if you grab any of the pamphlets in the back, that's on the little like booklet one. But we have classes on everything. So the introduction class is where you can start. That'll give you the most in-depth breakdown of all the different elements. And then university is where we're really going to get into like the weeds of like, okay, how do you actually do this? Like I've learned, I know the lingo, how am I going to actually do this? And then if you just want to start with flipping your park strip, that's a great place to start. It's kind of like the gateway drug to landscaping. You do the park strip and you're like, okay, I can do anything. I'm on top of the world. I'm ready. Start with flip your strip. And then it's design. If you're like, okay, I feel confident in everything else, but like, I just don't know how to draw a landscape plan. I don't know how to start. The design workshop is going to be for you. And then we also have the irrigation workshop. So in the back, I have a printout of all the classes that we're offering as live webinars and in-person classes this spring. But all of these are also on demand all the time. So you can watch them at your own pace. You can take your time with them, and they're always going to be there for you. But if you want to come in person, I get it if you don't want to see our faces all the time. It's mean, but it's fine. But if you want to come in person, we also have that option as well. And now we're going to get into the Conservation Garden Park. So have any of y'all been out to the Conservation Garden Park before? Okay, a couple hands again. You guys are like angels. So we're located at 8275 South, right? Yeah, 1300 West. I work there. That's so embarrassing. So this is a picture of what it looked like before. And from 1300 West all the way up to our administration building was lawn. Like, talk about embarrassing, right? Like, we're the freaking water district. So what we actually ended up doing is we opened our garden in 2001. Construction started in 1999. And we decided to take that lawn area that it wasn't being used, it was just being watered all day, every day, and turn it into a place where homeowners could come and they could learn about how to make more water-wise choices in their landscape. So this after picture is like right after this was installed. So if you come now, it's like, I don't even recognize this area. It looks so different. And then in 2012, we got this beautiful education center. So that's where my office is. That's where all of our offices are. And that's also where all of our in-person classes are held. So if you're ever coming and you're like, oh my gosh, which building do I end up going to? This is the building for you. This is also, we host a lot of tours throughout our garden. We have tours in every single season, which is great because you know what a plant looks like in spring, and it might be the most beautiful plant you've ever seen, and you fall in love with it. And then you come back in the winter and you're like, wait, I hate the look of that. And why didn't anyone tell me that it looked like this? So we highly recommend that you keep coming back so you can see how things change. And sometimes the like least assuming plants turn out to be like the most beautiful ones. You just have to catch them at the right time. And this is our Localscapes exhibit. So this was opened in 2019, and it is a lifelike, real life-size version of what we just talked through. So that little plan where I showed you the 5 elements and it like highlighted in yellow, like, oh, this one's this thing, and this is that in real life. And what's cool, it's kind of hard to see, but kind of up near the like window wells up there, you can see there's a number 4. And so all the different elements of the Localscape are labeled throughout the exhibit. So I'm a hands-on learner. I know a bunch of people are too. And this is a great place where you can come and see in real life with your hands, like, oh, this is what they were talking about. And you can see it doesn't look that different from a traditional landscape. It just looks, you know, more varied. And if you are flipping your strip, we have 8 different example park strips, which is really cool because they're all different planting designs, like design styles, but they're also different mulch types, they're different pathway types, different types of park strip trees are in them. So we really try to show people as many opportunities and different ways of designing a landscape. And our park strips also, in our education center, every single one of our park strips has a pre-designed free plan that you can pick up in that education center and take home with you. And if you like it that much, you can put it in your own park strip. So we really are trying to, you know, we have so many free resources that people just don't know about. And then finding your plants, this is either the best or most overwhelming part. On conservationgardenpark.org, we have this WaterWise plant finder where you can see, you can go through and you can put in any type of filter that you want, like down to the bloom color and the season. And then we'll go ahead and we'll pull up everything that we would recommend in northern Utah with those filters. And we'll also tell you what area of the garden you can find that plant in if we have it in our garden, which we usually do. And then on the right-hand side, we'll tell you the mature size of the plant, which is also really helpful because sometimes you go to the nursery and you see the cutest little baby that you've ever seen, and then 5 years later, it's ruining the foundation of your house. So try to really make sure to pay attention to that mature size when you're picking out plants. But so this is how I've learned all of the things that I know about plants. I'll just go on here and I'll just play around, and it's really fun. It's really intuitive, and it also helps you with some of those tricky areas in your landscape, like where maybe water collects in a weird area. So you need like a more high water usage plant, or maybe it's under a tree, or you are just having trouble finding something that will grow. If you can't use our database to find it, you can always give our garden a call, and we have 2 horticulturists that are full-time on staff, and they're more than happy to answer your questions too. Yeah. Yeah, it's conservationgardenpark.org. And then it's a tab called Find Plants. Yeah, thanks for asking. That's the most important part is how you find it. So thank you. And then here's an example of one of our tours. And this is also another reminder that our garden is actually open daily. Just check our hours because they do change throughout the seasons. With daylight hours, we can stay open later in the summer and kind of shorter in the winter and the fall. So right now we're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, but we're going to be opening Saturdays in the next couple weeks here. But we're also completely free. So you never have to pay anything. A lot of people will just come just to walk their dogs because it's a nice little like refuge away from the freeway, it feels like. So yeah, you're always welcome to come. Even if you're not taking a tour, self-guided tours are always more than encouraged. And while you're there, if you have any questions, please stop in the education center, and like we're just boo-bopping around in there. We're just waiting for people to ask us stuff. So don't be shy. And then here are all the different classes and events that we offer through Conservation Garden Park. We offer hands-on classes that are more immersive learning, where you're going to be out there. That's our horticulturist, Mike, and you're going to be out there with him, either like laying drip line yourselves, you're going to be pruning with him, you're going to be learning hands-on how to actually do these things. If that's not your style, like I said, we have a bunch of in-person classes where it's more like this, more PowerPoint lecture style. We also have an in-person design workshop, which is that top right, top left, I don't know for you guys, that one picture, where we'll sit down with you and we'll help you actually design your own landscape plan. We just ask that you come with a little base map drawing of your house on some grid paper, and then we'll help you sit down and pick the best spot for your central open shape, and then we'll talk about your activity areas and things like that. So we really will take the time to guide you through the process. Yeah, and then of course we have our tours. We also have a big event coming up on May 18th. We have a garden open house is what we call it. It's like our Ask an Expert event. It's really fun. There are like food trucks and live music, totally free. And you can come and we have different tabling things set up where there's like an irrigation booth and a landscape design booth. So if you're looking for something fun to do in May, that might be it. But maybe in-person stuff isn't your style, and that's totally okay. So we have all of these options also online as well. We have a YouTube channel that's called Conservation Garden Park, and that's super valuable. On that website, we have videos on how to get a drip line underneath a sidewalk and how to prune a pear tree. From literally anything you could imagine, we have it on there. We also have recordings of all of our webinar taught classes. So you can learn about water-wise vegetable gardening, you can learn about composting, you can learn about landscape design, really any and everything, all gonna be up there for free. And then this is a picture of our garden in the winter, and it's still just as beautiful. So trying to convince people to come out when there's snow on the ground. I know it's hard because it's cold, but. So that was the Conservation Garden Park. And now we're going to move into our last section, which is going to be our Utah Water Savers section. So how many of you guys have heard about Utah Water Savers? Okay, that was the most. That's surprising. That's cool. So Utah Water Savers is our main hub for all water saving rebates in the state of Utah. So no matter where you live in the state, whether or not you're in our service area or if you live in Vernal or if you live in St. George, anyone you know can go to this utahwatersavers.com website and find what programs that they're eligible for. So there are three main programs. The first one is our Smart Sprinkler Controller program. We have a toilet replacement rebate, and then we have a landscape incentive program, which that's the one we'll focus on the most, but I do want to talk about the other two because they're also important. So first is our smart controllers. So we will give you up to a $75 rebate if you install a WaterSense certified controller. WaterSense is an EPA certification, and your controller, when you buy it, it will say if it's WaterSense certified or not. And to participate in this program, all you have to do is make an account on utahwatersavers.com, and then you'll take a picture of your receipt and submit it, and then you'll get that reimbursement. And what smart controllers do, just in case you're not familiar, is they take into account local weather data in order to kind of amp up or amp down your irrigation. So obviously you can spend a lot more money and get like soil probes and all these things that'll be much more accurate onto how to replenish your soil so that your plants can take up the most ideal amount of water. But there are some that will just even like tap into the closest weather station to you. Sometimes, I mean, you guys know, you live here. Sometimes it's pouring in the valley in one area and it's like sunshine and rainbows in another. So I like to just caution people that smart controllers are really only as smart as the person who programs it. So if you don't go in there and set it to, okay, this is going to be watering shrubs and kind of tinker with it a bit, it will just automatically set as if it's a normal irrigation controller and sometimes turn down your irrigation water, but that's just something to keep in mind. We have some more resources on that too, or if you have questions, you can always ask me. And then we have our toilet replacement. So we'll give you up to $100 per each of 2 toilets in your house if you're replacing pre-1994 toilets. Once again, you have to replace them with a WaterSense certified toilet. And then this is kind of a pop quiz to see who was paying attention at the very beginning. But in that graph that I showed you where I showed the 60% water usage being outdoors, I don't know if y'all noticed, but in indoor water usage, the toilet was actually the biggest water user, which is kind of crazy because you think about like, my brother takes 20-minute long showers. And I'm like, that's less than him flushing the toilet? Like, that's crazy to me. But I had a statistic, yeah, so toilets will account for 30% of all of your household indoor water use. That's beating washing machines, dishwashers, showers. That's crazy. So there's been a lot of engineering to go into how do we make our toilets, flush better while also using less water. So that's why we have that. And then the landscape incentive program. So this is what you'll be participating in if you are deciding to take out lawn and replace it with water-wise landscaping. We will incentivize for $3 per square foot of lawn replaced with water-wise landscaping. So $3 per square foot is huge. Not last year, but the year before, we were only offering 30 cents a square foot. But last year and this year, we've actually been super grateful. We've received a bunch of funding from the state of Utah because the state's really investing in water conservation. So we're really excited because this is actually going to help people hopefully install these landscapes and pay for more of the installation costs. One thing I want to highlight on this is that you do, in order to be eligible, you do have to be replacing lawn. So you have to have a lawn in order to be eligible for the rebate. And it has to be a lawn that is alive and reasonably well maintained is the official legal language that we use. So the word reasonably, we can kind of, wiggle a little, but just before you start your project, make sure that you reach out to us and you apply. Otherwise, we won't be able to retroactively fund projects that have already been completed. And did you have a question? This is going to replace that. So yeah, our website, we're hoping that it's completely updated with 2024 information on the 15th of March. So you're not alone. Everyone's been calling being like, is it $1? Is it $3? I'm confused. And I'm like, girl, I'm confused. Don't even start with me. But yeah, so it'll be $3 for a park strip. It's the same for a park strip or for any area in your lawn. So the only little caveat there is that it has to be a minimum of 200 square feet that you're replacing. So that's pretty easy to hit though. And then we're also really excited. We're rolling out 2 new programs this year, which is really exciting news. So we're rolling out a switch to drip program. So this is where we'll give you 50 cents per square foot of planting bed. That's like a mature planting bed that already exists in your landscape. If it's being watered with overhead spray currently and you want to put it on drip irrigation, we'll pay you 50 cents a square foot for that. So that's really exciting because, to me, your overhead spray, if it's watering a lawn area or if it's watering the back of a shrub, you're still wasting the same amount of water. You're still losing the same amount of water to evaporation. And often in a planting bed, that's one of the least efficient areas to have overhead spray because as your plants mature, they block the range that spray is actually allowed to get through. So that's why, you plant this beautiful design and then the plants in the front die and you're like, well, why? Well, it's because they can't get any water because your giant ornamental grass is blocking it. So we're really excited about this. And then this is one that I think everyone's going to be really excited about. So we're launching a tree bait, which is where we'll offer $100 per tree planted in your project area, up to 5 trees. So the only thing you have to know with this one is you do have to be participating in either the switch to drip or the lawn removal program in order to be eligible for the tree bait. So you can't just plant the trees without removing lawn or switching to drip, just because we have to get funding from the same source. Very boring answer, honestly, but that's the real answer. So yeah, but up to 5 trees, and then just make sure to save that nursery tree tag because we'll just have you turn it into us at the end of your project. And then we also have a do not plant list, which the things that are on the list are like Russian olives or Siberian elms or things that you don't want to plant. We're not going to just be like, don't plant this because I don't like the look of it. It's like, these are invasive, horrible trees you'll be unhappy with. But certain cities do have certain codes, certain neighborhoods do have certain codes, HOAs. So just if you are planting trees, just make sure you check with everybody first to make sure it's an approved tree type. And we're more than happy to help you do that too if you have any questions. So, and then I wanted to close out by hopefully giving you some inspiration. If I haven't inspired you already, I hope the other residents of Draper will inspire you. So we're going to go through a couple completed projects from some Draper residents. So here's a backyard. This is a really great example of pathways. I love it. I just want to call out all of these landscapes are like, the pictures are taken right after they've been planted. So these aren't mature plants. These plants are going to get much bigger. They're going to really fill in. But you can still see the vision. You know, you can see like, okay, there's movement. We have these different areas. You can see we planted some taller trees in the back to help with some privacy, maybe help not have the view of that vinyl fence. Here's that landscape again, but I wanted to show you this little kind of gathering space that they put in. I think that looks really nice. Here's a smaller front yard. So with newer construction projects, we've seen that our lot sizes are shrinking, and they're also turning into these like more uniquely shaped lots. So if that's your case, you can still do this. You can still have a beautiful landscape, and you can still keep lawn if you want to keep lawn. So this is a great example of that. This is kind of a smaller front yard, but I think it still looks really nice. And if you were to drive past this, you wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, what an eyesore. It totally stands out. I think it looks really good. Here's the next one. Once again, newly planted, so all of our plants are little babies, but they still have some lawn. All of these plants are going to get a lot bigger. I'm going to laugh if like one of these people are your neighbors or something. You're like, oh my gosh, that's Dan, or I don't know. Like, this is a house in Suncrest. So we get a lot of participants actually up in Suncrest because they have a really unique situation where there's that kind of like native vegetation to horticultural boundary there. And there's a lot of like fire concern, or there's these different worries about like specific areas in Draper. You guys have a really varied landscape type. You have a bunch of different types of landscapes here, but a Localscape will still work in these areas, and often they can help. You can do some like fire prevention landscaping within a Localscape, which is a really cool idea. Here's a nice gathering area. These chairs are really funky. I don't know where they got them, but I think they're kind of fun. And then here's a cool kind of like side yard. This side yard is huge. Like, side yard's bigger than my whole lot size, I feel like, at my house. But I think rather than that being 100% lawn going up into like their front yard, I think that this pathway and fire pit and this kind of like planting bed is just much more interesting. And it's kind of like, it seems not real, right? You're like, okay, it can't look better and save water and like make me enjoy my life more. But I'm not even lying. Like, it is real. It's crazy. So here's a park strip. This was a participant from last year. So his park strip actually wrapped all the way around, like halfway up the main road over there too. And so he was like, we're just pouring water into the street because the bus would stop there and the kids would get out and they'd like break his sprinkler. I don't know what kids are doing, okay? I'm not going to say I know, but they would somehow, his sprinkler head kept getting broken. He was just like gushing water in the street. And he's like, I'm so happy I can bury a drip line where they won't find it. So yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Like the, yeah, and it actually does. It just has, yes, the same, to her question, just because I realize now she doesn't have a mic. So she was asking, do the same rules apply if you're flipping your strip versus doing like a whole front yard or a whole backyard? And the answer is yes, the rules are all going to be the same. In this picture, which I'm glad you brought this up, because often when you flip your strip or when you install a new landscape, it won't look like it's 50% plant coverage, which is one of our program requirements. But you can see like those tiny little green flat looking plants. They're kind of hard to see. They're behind that ornamental grass. But those, I wasn't on this visit, so I don't know exactly what they are, but they're a ground cover of sorts. So their mature size is like way bigger than what that is, and it'll eventually cover the space. So we understand like the more mature a plant is when you buy it from the like nursery, the more expensive it is too. And there's actually a lot of benefits to planting juvenile plants because their roots actually get accustomed to the soil that they're put in. So we're not like going to get mad at you if you're like, I'm sorry, it's a baby. We're like, we see the vision. We'll go with you for the most part. So, and if you end up flipping your strip and you don't have 50% plant coverage, then we'll just tell you to add a few plants and then you can still be a part of the program. So it's not like a one fail and you're out and we won't talk to you again. So hopefully it's not like that. If it is, I'll talk to my coworkers for you. And then this is a side yard. So this before was all grass. and it looked normal, but it doesn't look as cool as this. So this one is really, I just think it looks nice, looks clean, and once it all fills in, it's gonna look really nice. So that is kind of all I have for you guys. I know it was like a fire hose of information, and that's what this class is designed to be. Really, we just want to get your toes wet and introduce you to all the different resources that we do have. If you didn't already, we have a ton of pamphlets in the back on all these different resources. I'll chuck a few of my business cards back there too. And if you have any questions that you want to email me, whether it's like specifically about your own project or it's about a random plant, I'm always happy to help. And then I'll stay around also for a couple minutes after class if you want to come up and ask any questions. So yeah, I'll take a few questions now. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a great question. So her question was her park strip something, I'm sorry, first of all, is killing her park strip slowly in this like agonizing way of watching her grass die. But part of it's dead and part of it's alive. Is it still going to qualify for the rebate? And the answer is usually yes. So if we can take a picture of it and prove that like this is grass, because we get audited by the state for the funding. So if we can take a picture and submit it to them to be audited, like this is grass and it's reasonable, then it will still qualify. If it's like dirt and a couple bindweeds, it's a little harder to convince the state to help us pay for it. But as long as it's like reasonable, if there's dead patches or even if it's like 50% living, we'll still take it. So just like you can even email us pictures and we'll let you know beforehand too. That's a great question. Yeah. Yeah. How do you document it? Sorry, I didn't hear the first part. How do you document it? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is a great question. I'm glad you brought that up. So how the process will work usually is you'll go onto Utah Water Savers and take a picture of your lawn like as it's existing right now, and then don't start. Wait for us to schedule a visit time with you, and then our staff will come out in these little polo shirts and we'll introduce ourselves to you and we'll kind of talk through your design plan. So you'll have to submit a plan as a part of the incentive too. It doesn't have to be professionally done. It can be if that's what you're interested in, but it can even be like a Google Map screenshot and like an outline of the area you want to remove. And we'll talk through it with you. We'll make sure there's nothing in it that's going to break any of the program code. It's really just kind of like a consultation time for you more than anything else. And then after you've done that first visit, we'll give you the go ahead to start your project. And then you'll have a year from that day to finish your project. And then once you're done, you'll take a picture of the completed project, upload it to that same website. We'll come out for a second visit, and then we'll test your irrigation to make sure you aren't scamming us, basically. But no, we'll just test it. And then if there's anything like wrong with it, we'll help you fix it. It's really not like I said, a pass or fail situation. We try to help you with it. And then you'll get the incentive after that second visit. Did that answer your question? Okay, cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another great question. So she asked about the people who will help her kind of like do her landscape design at the garden park. The best way of doing that, we have a design workshop that's going to be more of like a class oriented thing where there's going to be round tables and we'll sit you down at the round tables and a bunch of our staff will be walking around and it's more of like a guided event. But if you are interested in like a one-on-one consultation, you can pick up my email back there too, and we have a couple people on staff who help do that too. So that's one of those things where it's kind of like time available though, I will tell you. Once the spring like really starts and we're like running around, we might only have like a half an hour, but we'll try and help you as much as we can, even if it's like questions over email. That's a good question. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the flood irrigation. Yeah. Yeah, does it have so her question is I have an area that is like a big area that used to be used with like flood irrigation in like a gardening patch. Yeah. Does it have any like overhead spray in it yet? Okay. I don't know on that one then, because it wouldn't count for the $3. But if it had overhead spray, it would count for that 50 cents switch to drip program. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not sure about that one. So if you want, you can grab my card and email me about it though, and I'll happily check for you too. Yeah. Any other last minute questions? Ooh, 100. Okay. Yeah. Mhm. 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 Yeah. So her question was, let's say I want to do my whole front yard, but I don't feel like I have the resources and the time available to do the whole front yard in 1 year. Can I break it up? And the answer is absolutely yes. We really encourage people to do that, honestly, because that way you get your like head in the game almost, and you can start in with that phased installation. So the only caveat is you just have to do at least 200 square feet at a time, but you can totally break it up. That's a great question. Yeah. And then I saw you had one. Yeah, so that's another great question. Are there any nurseries in the valley that specialize in native plants? And the answer is like yes and no, because it's native plants are so hard. Because at the end of the day, it's like, what's even native now? Things have changed so much. But as far as nurseries go, there's Deseret Perennial Farms, which is like a local one, and Progressive Plants is another one. Progressive Plants is kind of fun because you'll like get on a golf cart and like take the tour of your life driving around, and then you can order through them online. There's also Glover Nursery. They have a lot of different stuff. There's like a lot of horticultural plants, but they also have some natives too. And then there's a Utah pollinator habitat rebate program also that's run through the Department of Agriculture. And they just opened applications actually last week, I believe. And what's cool about that program is if you're replacing 900 square feet of, I guess, like water intensive landscaping with water wise landscaping, they can actually help you by providing pollinator native either plant seeds or plugs. So that's kind of cool. You might want to look into that. Yeah. Yeah, I think so her question was with that pollinator habitat program, you pick up the plants in the fall. And I think that's right. So I think it's fall 2024. And that's because a lot of plants, it's actually better to plant in the fall. And especially if you're sowing seed with these native plants. I am not super familiar with their program. So I'm not sure like what specific seeds they're giving you or plugs. But yeah, I do think that you pick them up in the fall. So if you are doing that program, make sure to just plan your rebate timing with the plant pickup, and you'll have to do a little Google Calendar shenanigans, but I believe in you. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the question was, what if I want to replace a bunch of grass with an RV pad or a sport court? Geez, that was hard. And the answer is you can totally do that too. There are a few more requirements with like a hardscaping project. So just like in the briefest way, it's in your front yard, you can't have more than half of your landscaping area be hardscape. And in the backyard, it can't be more than 75%. So as long as you're within that range, really that range is there because we don't want to incentivize people like concreting the earth, because then we're like, oh shoot, urban heat island effect, and like no one's going to be happy with us. But we also don't want people to not be able to install RV pads and sport courts and things they're going to use. So you can totally apply for that too, and you'll still get the incentive. Yeah, if you're removing lawn, it's that same $3 a square foot. And then another thing with that is we'll often, if you're doing an RV pad, we'll often ask that you get approval from your city planner because it's technically considered additional parking, and cities require approval for additional parking. But it's super easy. We'll send you the planner and we'll send you their email address. And so all you do is send them your plan and then they stamp it and then you're good to go. So it sounds like a huge process, but it takes like 15 minutes. So, and we'll talk through all of that with you on your first visit when you apply. So, any other questions? Mm-hmm. Mhm. Yeah. So the question is, what if I have an area that I kind of just want to let it go SOL? It's its time, its final resting place. The answer is you'd still have to remove your sprinklers or cap them, and then depending upon if you are like not exceeding those hardscape limits, what you could do is you could just throw down some gravel or some rock mulch in that area. The only place that won't work is in your park strip. In your park strip, you're always required to have that 50% plant coverage. But if it's like in a side yard or somewhere in your backyard or front yard, as long as it's not more than half the front or more than 75% of the back, we'll work with you on it. Mhm. Oh, okay. Yeah. If it's a if it's a common area in an HOA, commercial that's considered like a commercial project, and they have some more leniency in commercial projects. So I'll give you the name of who you should email if you come up to me after class, and I'll give you a good answer on that one. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so that's another great question. So she was asking in here, is it going to talk about like soil stability or like how to prevent against erosion and pests and like promote biodiversity and different pollinators? And the answer is once again yes and no. You love a big answer. I love giving them. You love hearing them. So our resources, like our staff, if you come to us with specific concerns, we're super happy to like delve into it with you. But I will point you to some more resources too. USU Extension is a free extension service throughout the whole state of Utah, and they're amazing. They're the smartest people on the planet, I swear. Like you can take a picture of a plant that has some sort of disease and email it to them, and they'll diagnose it and give you treatment and then send it back to you for free. And that just exists. Like we should be talking about this. So if you have a specific like concern, that's another great resource for you too. Yeah, it's USU, so Utah State University Extension Service. Yeah, they're really great. They have a bunch of classes too. They're hosting a urban homestead expo in a couple weekends. I think it's the 23rd of March, and that's like a whole virtual event if you're interested in those classes. But for that, I guess I'm going to wrap up on the mic. But thank you guys again so much for coming. Seriously, it's super awesome that you sat through an hour of me talking. A lot of people can't do that. So thank you again. And I'm excited to see what y'all do with your landscapes. And if you have any questions, just holler at me. So thank you guys.